May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Hey, happy Friday, everybody. You are tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. And I am Scott, your host, and a man who thinks the phrase going viral is going to become pretty unpopular in the coming years. I can see it. You know, Paul B is usually with me in the booth, but now our relationship is more like curbside delivery of a podcast. I basically produce it and drop it off, and Paul comes in unseen and without touching anyone. He creates the final version in a contactless, perfectly safe production environment. So shout out to Paul B. He's not on the air with us, but he's close to our hearts, and we know he's out there producing the show for the final product that everybody's going to hear. So who am I? What do I do? And how do you reach me? So I am a public relations and marketing consultant based in Orange County, California. I run a company called Robertson Communications. I help companies tell better stories, better brand messaging, and to basically just do a better job and win at marketing. I'm also a certified story brand guide now, so I create even better brand stories, website wireframes, anything a company needs to be successful. And on this podcast, we talk about all the things that make marketing successful. You guys are super smart because you've tuned into a great episode. This is episode 160 of the show. I call this one "Making Sure Your Price is Right with Science." And joining us today is, if you study marketing, you know about the 4 Ps, right? And one of those Ps, a big one, is pricing. And with us today is an absolute expert in pricing, Per, the price whisperer, the CEO of the great market research company, Atenga. They do price-specific market research, also called predictive demand analysis. Per is going to tell us all about that. And Per is an expert in what things should cost. So we're going to talk about pricing, and Per is going to show us some of the really cool science behind pricing. We're also going to talk about who's winning and losing in what I'm going to call another affordably priced and award-winning episode of May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media. So, Per, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Scott, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think let's just dig right into it. You're you call yourself the price whisperer. People call you the price whisperer. What's your story? How'd you get into this? How does an engineer get interested and become an expert in pricing?
Well, I call myself the price whisperer only because I've been called the price whisperer so many times that I just decided that why not adopt what people call me? The background here is that I've had the chance to run a few companies in Europe, when I lived there, and a few companies here in the States once I moved here in the mid-90s. And in those companies, we did experiments with pricing just because it was a bit of an interest area for me. Some of those experiments worked beautifully, like next quarter revenues are up with 25% type, and some were complete disasters. And what I had learned in business school and could read about pricing at the time was so academic that it was useless. It didn't help us at all to figure out why some of these experiments worked and some did not. So a dozen years ago, I decided to figure out the process that would make pricing practical and really make every pricing experiment a success.
Awesome. Well, you and I have talked, and companies make a lot of mistakes in pricing. So how often do companies make mistakes in pricing? And maybe tell us about that guitar string manufacturer and that case that you got involved in. You don't have to name any names in the music industry or anything, but maybe just tell us as an example of that. Tell us about some of the mistakes people make in pricing.
Well, maybe the biggest mistake is not to understand the relationship between price and profits. And most companies will see there's something that I call the 1% challenge. And the 1% challenge consists of, the background is really some research that was done quite a few years ago on public companies where they found that if you look at from the very highest level, any company's profits only comes from only three variables. It's the total cost, it's the total sales volume, and it's the price of whatever you sell. And most companies have resulting pre-tax profits of about 10%. Now, out of these three variables, pricing has the highest leverage because it only affects the top line. And so the 1% challenge here is really, have you ever failed to change anything a single percent? Of course you have not. And if you add a percent priced on top of your on top of your current price, for the average company, profitability will go up 11.3%.
Wow.
Well, and then, why not 5%?
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe why not 10%? And you doubled your profits. So that's how you need to think about pricing. And when you think about pricing in that context, everything in the company changes, because it's not only price, it's discount that works the same way. So you suddenly become very cautious of giving discounts because you're giving away your profits. And you look at your product or your services and you see, what of these products or services are unique that I have pricing power, and there you can increase your prices. But let me. You asked for the guitar string story, and it is sort of an interesting story. We worked with this company who makes guitar strings, and guitar strings are very much commoditized, and they're being sold on price.
Sure.
But we could tell that company that this new string that they were bringing out was so unique and so high quality and so good that they could actually price it much higher than they otherwise would have done. And then I have my neighbor here is a guy called Emmett Chapman. He developed an instrument called the Chapman stick, and he's sort of famous in some areas.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, and he's doing concerts. And about half a year ago, he did a concert in the sort of a back room, like a little club in a local music store. And I spoke to the owner of this music store or music equipment store about this story with a guitar string, and how we could prove to the vendor, to the manufacturer, that they could charge much higher prices, which they did. And so he get those strings. They have a much higher map price than other strings. And I tell him the story, and he tells me, so you're the reason I'm making so much money on these strings.
Nice.
And not only that, because there's something called expectation bias. If you buy something at a high price, you expect a higher quality and a higher benefit. And because you expect a higher benefit, you get a higher benefit. So higher price in this context also drives higher customer satisfaction.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's a great story. Well, how does somebody know if your price is too high or too low? I mean, how would somebody even know that?
Well, almost all prices are too low.
Okay.
To start off with.
There you go. Start off. Perfect.
And that is because most companies don't understand how we humans make decisions, and don't understand that too low can be too low. And of course, there's oodles of stories I have similar to the guitar string, where companies have increased their prices and, surprise, surprise, also see an increase in sales.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a win-win, right? I mean,
that is a win-win. Yeah.
That's definitely a win-win for the business.
Absolutely.
All right. So, one thing I've always been curious about, most prices are odd numbers.
Mm-hmm.
$599, $299, $10,599. Can you explain the pricing of odd versus even numbers, the science behind that?
Well, it's because it's how we humans read stuff and how we use references. And when we read $29.99, what our brain says is that it's 20 something.
Yeah.
Versus if $30, which is 30 something, but because that first digit becomes an anchor and you don't really see the rest of it.
Oh, okay. I see. Interesting.
So but having said that, your pricing, whether you're going to price on the 9, sometimes it's called charm pricing, and it's the 95, 97, 98, 99.
Yeah.
Sometimes it really depends on what you want to sell, because just as you alluded to at the beginning, that pricing is one of the 4 P's of marketing.
Right.
And one of the things that price does is that it is a message of quality.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are selling something that is unique, where you want to have, a high quality product, a premium product, anything where you want the price to be part of that premium product messaging, you are not going to price it on the 9. It is going to be 30. It is going to be 10,000 and not 9,999. Because for certain products, for certain quality products, that pricing on the 9 then becomes a message of people start wondering, can this be any good?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like you say, it's and it's about value too, right? So people perceive value in price, as you were saying. So, sometimes if you have a higher quality product and you sell it for less, you're actually sending a conflicting message about value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I'm a bit of an audiophile, and there are people within the audiophile community that spends $5,000 on a USB cable. Now,
yeah.
and to go from wherever their computer to a DAC, and then they do A/B testing, and compared to your $5 USB cable, that $5,000 USB cable is going to sound better. Technically, there's no difference whatsoever. There cannot be any difference. But they hear a difference, and that difference is real for them, and it is because they paid so much money for it. They expect a difference, so therefore they see or hear a difference. And this is something that's been proven again and again. For example, if you've got a headache, a 5-cent aspirin is not nearly as effective as a 50-cent aspirin.
Okay.
So it's all in our heads.
Interesting. So why do so many companies, a lot of my audience is in the music industry. Why do so many companies just race to the bottom on price? I mean, they just can't get there fast. They can't get there fast enough.
Yeah. The reason that is really that too many companies look at a competitor and they price the same. Mm-hmm. Too many companies don't understand the differentiators in their product that leads to a higher willingness to pay among their customers. Too many companies believe that sales volume is everything as opposed to profits. And too many companies don't know the profile of their most desirable customer. And the profile of the most desirable customer is the customer who has the highest willingness to pay at the highest prices. That's where you're going to make the most money.
Interesting. So you're saying that, doing more research in pricing would really benefit a lot of companies.
Yes, absolutely. And understanding who are willing to pay more for this product and why. So you use that in marketing and messaging. Even things like product names and brands drives differences in willingness to pay.
Well, tell me about predictive demand analysis. Tell me what that entails.
Well, so I mentioned that I developed a process to make every pricing experiment a success. And that process is predictive demand analysis. And it is based on being able to predict the sales volume at any prices. Predict the sales volume at different prices. And that could be done very accurately. And then you correlate that predictions with various attributes about the buyer and about the seller. So just to give you examples, if we start with the buyer, attributes could be in a consumer space, it could be demographics like gender, income, location, number of kids, education, interest areas, and so forth. If it's a B2B, it's more like maybe industry, size of company, whether it's services or products and so forth they sell, even the title of the actual buyer. When it comes to attributes about the seller, it is everything about the seller, everything about the product or the service. It's features and functions and benefits. It is the marketing messages. It's the sales channels, the sales methodology, and so forth. And when you know how each of these attributes affects willingness to pay, then you have a data-driven go-to-market strategy that will drive higher sales volume at higher prices.
Interesting. That's really interesting research. And and I'm sure not enough companies are doing that level of research and can certainly benefit from it. What percentage of companies do you think invest the proper amount of time in doing predictive demand analysis or doing any sort of research about pricing?
About 4%.
Wow, just 4%.
Yep.
Wow. That's
the 96%. They look at a competitor. They maybe use cost plus some kind of fixed margin. They use gut feel. I mean, I had this conversation with the CEO about a year, maybe 2 years ago. That he said, we priced our service at $160. It was a SaaS of some kind.
Yeah.
And then he said, that's a price that feels good for me. It may be completely wrong. Maybe we should have done 250. Maybe we should have done 99. I don't know. But 160 feels good.
It feels good.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, pricing is a fascinating subject. I've seen a lot of companies, in my work, when something comes to market, they have to figure out what to price it. Mm-hmm. And you're right. And they do it with such little information. So, who in an organization, title wise, position wise, role wise, who should make the decision on pricing, do you think?
Well, the right decision on pricing is to use this predictive demand analysis, and because then then you have all the answers. This is a CEO decision.
It's the CEO, yeah.
Because you have sales who always want lower prices,
right?
You have marketing who always say we want value pricing, but then they don't know what the value is, and we have finance who always want higher prices.
Interesting. You say so. Sales wants lower prices, but they would actually make more money if things were priced higher, particularly if they were on commission.
Yeah, absolutely. But salespeople typically believe that lower prices is going to make life easier for them.
But that's not true.
No, that's not true at all.
Wow. Interesting. Well, that's interesting. So it's got to be a CEO decision, and what should the CEO, let's say there's a CEO listening to this program right now, what should the CEO use to make a pricing decision?
Well, I mean, I don't want to make it selling, but calling us would be a good thing.
Well, no, you're right. I mean, because You guys are the experts, and you do the research.
Yeah, I think you're right. You need expert help because there's so few companies that has the internal resources to do this themselves, and it's so specialized competence that it's not something that you shouldn't wing it, because it's so important and crucial to any business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good stuff. Well, we're coming to the end of this segment, but how would people get let's say CEOs are out there and they want to get in touch with you and your company. What's the best way to get in touch with you guys?
Well, the website is atenga.com, atenga.com. And
okay.
my email is per@atenga.com.
And Per is PER. Right?
Yes, PER, yes.
PR. Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, you guys are listening to Per, the Price Whisperer. You're tuned in to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media. We're going to come back, and Per's going to give us a few pricing tips in the next segment. So stay right where you are, and we'll be coming back real soon.
Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. You are tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. I am Scott, still your host. You're tuned into episode 160, making sure your price is right with science with Per the Price Whisperer. Take a little break here in segment 2, and we're just going to talk about who's winning and losing this week. So let's do that. So, according to a new study, consumers want to show social ads that show a return to normalcy, whatever that means. And Mobile Marketer this week, they talk about that. Consumers in several countries, including the United States, want to see brands emphasize efforts to help people return to normal after the coronavirus disrupted their normal routines. So that stuff we talked about a couple weeks ago, message fatigue, it's really set in now. And so you want to be really careful with your messaging so that it doesn't remind people of the bad times, and instead kind of talks about how to get back to normal, how to get back to the good times. So that's certainly the advice that I would give. Brands that maintain their social media advertising during the early days of coronavirus pandemic had less competition for viewers, and it made their marketing efforts more efficient in several countries. For example, 70% of consumers in Italy and Spain, two of the countries with strict lockdowns, they'd seen ads for more brands that they'd never purchased before. Half of consumers worldwide said they had bought an item they saw in a social ad in the prior 30 days as e-commerce surged in countries affected by the pandemic. So kind of interesting, but certainly a word of advice about the messaging, and we have to say that anybody is going to be winning that is solving problems for people and showing people how to get back to some sense of normalcy. So winning. Ben & Jerry's this week calls on America to quote unquote dismantle white supremacy in what's called an extraordinary corporate statement. So I'm really not going to talk about whether what they said was right or wrong, or whether I agree with it, because that doesn't really matter. This is a show about marketing, so we're going to talk about what it's like to sort of speak your truth, or speak your brand's truth in this case. And I believe that they did that. I think that, Ben & Jerry's is a brand that has, that certainly has certain values, related to this, that this is very, it's very, much in step with what they've done before. But it is, I agree with the statement that people have said that it's an extraordinary corporate statement, because most corporate statements are pretty safe, and they've been written by legal, and they're pretty much full of a lot of BS and that sort of thing. And one thing, whether you agree or disagree with what Ben & Jerry's is saying, one thing that you have to say is that they're pretty bold for saying it. They're pretty clear about where they stand on the issue, and I encourage you to read that. It's been published a lot of different places, but they basically have a kind of a 4-part plan, what they're going to do, and to sort of dismantle, what they call white supremacy in society. So kind of interesting. They've been applauded quite a bit on social media. Lots of people have said, that this is a great corporate statement from them. Pretty amazing statement. Like I said, as somebody that evaluates these kind of statements all the time, what can we expect from a corporate statement? It's going to be safe. It's going to be full of crap. It's going to have a bunch of, solution oriented, robust, words and stuff that legal approved, and they're completely, sanitized for public consumption. This statement is none of that. This statement is none of that. It's absolutely out on a limb. It's absolutely, saying, here's what we think is wrong with society. And like I said, and whether you agree or disagree with it, politically or what have you, isn't as important as from a brand perspective, understanding what it's like to really be out there and sort of speak your truth. So I got to say it's probably winning on that account, right? I mean, almost any corporate statement that we've read on this show isn't even close to delivering the clarity and the emotion that Ben and Jerry's does. So anyway, we're going to put it on winning. Here's a weird one. So coronavirus isn't actually over, still going on. And a weird study comes out from researchers of Harvard University. And basically, they ranked different sexual scenarios based on how likely you are to catch coronavirus during them. And they said, and they actually did say this, sadly for society, they said, having sex with a mask on is safer and better, like a surgical mask, having that on like during sex. So, yeah, that is, that's losing on a couple of levels that we could talk about. It's been picked up by a lot of different media outlets, but I think we could safely say that there's a few ways to ruin the mood romantically. I'm going to say that putting on a surgical mask is on the top of that list. Is very close to the top of that list, and if you guys if you're having sex with someone and you feel like you're going to catch, coronavirus from them, perhaps you shouldn't be engaging in that activity rather than doing it, with a mask on. That's we're always about clarity on this show, right? And I would just say clarity in this case would be probably go the abstinence route rather than go the mask route. That's just odd, very, very strange. So that's all kinds of losing. Let's talk about Skittles for a minute. So Skittles has an interesting marketing. I guess Pride is coming up, and basically Skittles has taken all the color out of its packaging and its candies. Obviously Skittles has rainbow candies and that kind of stuff, and they've taken that out and basically produced gray packaging and gray candies that have no color, and which is a strange marketing move for Skittles, right? The idea of it is basically that, let's see, the Skittles Pride packs are gray to reflect neutrality. The gray candies and packaging resemble the cemented efforts of elevating the LGBTQ plus community during Pride and beyond instead of a specific color. Weird. Interesting. So here's my thoughts just from a branding perspective. Your branding is the rainbow. Well, Pride is the rainbow. You probably don't want to overthink this. This is not a time when you removing the rainbow from that is like, I don't know, a football team removing its logo. It's you've taken away the thing that represents represents the brand. So that's a really weird marketing choice. Also, studies have shown that people don't like to eat foods that are gray, in nature. So, and eating gray candy and that stuff is going to make people kind of, it's just strange. And I think it goes in the category, the bucket of sort of overthinking stuff. What can we do? Oh, well, let's do the opposite. Just do the rainbow. I think it would have been better, my opinion as a marketer, it would have been better to do your Pride packs and really accentuate the rainbow, during Pride, if that's something that you wanted to do. If that's a choice that you made, a better way to do it would be to kind of accentuate it, and that as opposed to removing the color, which to me means you're ashamed of the rainbow, or it means you're doing something else that's going to be pretty wildly misinterpreted. So I think that's clearly in the bucket of overthinking, and you don't want to do that. Anyway, that's my opinion. Anyway, right now you are tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. Come on back in segment 3, and Per is going to leave us with some awesome pricing tips. Talk to you soon.
Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. You are still tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. I'm Scott, your host. I'm here with Per, the Price Whisperer. Per's joined us for the show today to talk about the science of pricing. And we're lucky because Per stuck around in segment 3, and he is going to give us some pricing tips. So Per, you're the expert in pricing. What's the first tip that you have for us today?
Well, first of all, the most important thing for anybody when it comes to pricing is to realize the importance pricing have on profits. And if you don't have profits, you eventually don't have a company. So profits is crucial for every company. And if you don't have profits, eventually you're going to run out of money and you're gone. So profits is crucial. So one have to look at pricing in the context, what I said in the first segment, of that 1% challenge, of understanding for your company how much 1% extra price or 1% less discounting, what it does for you in your company, in your circumstance, on your profitability. Making that very simple calculation is the most important thing you can do. Because once you've done that, and once you redo it every month or so, everything's going to change in your company, because you are going to focus on making profits.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And why do you want profits? Because you want to reinvest it in more marketing, in more product development, in becoming more competitive. So profits doesn't sit there just, in the bank. It's capital that you use in your company to drive the company forward. That is the most important thing.
That's great. That's great stuff. And what's your second tip for us?
Well, the second is people do mistakes with pricing. Some of the most common mistakes is to price as a competitor, or price with cost plus, or simply just guess the price. The looking at a competitor and price the same it leaves a lot of things, and it ends up you leaving money on the table. First of all, it's very hard to know what a competitor actually charge, even if they have their prices on their website. You don't know what special deals they have, what packages they do, and so forth. Now, if you do price as the competitor, you become a commodity. And then means that you don't have differentiators that make sense for your buyers. And a commodity product are sold on price alone. Think about gas. That's a commodity. People buy it on price alone, because it's the same. Whatever these gas companies trying to convince you that their gas is better than somebody else's, it's not.
Exactly. We have different. Yeah, we have Chevron with Techron or whatever that is, and
exactly.
Nobody can identify what the heck is even.
And maybe there's some additive that may or may not make a difference. So looking at a competitor and set the price of a competitor leads to commoditization. And when you're commoditized, low price is the only thing that matters. So you won't be able to hold your price. So differentiate your product or your service in such a way that makes sense for the for your customers means that you get pricing power and you can charge higher prices and often see a higher sales volume as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. So what's your third tip for us then?
Third tip is something called price anchoring. And I mentioned that in the first segment, that when we look at prices on this, $29.99 versus $30, for example, we use that very first digit as the anchor. And because of that, the rest is not so important. Okay? So
yes.
What this means is that whenever you present your price, whether it's on your website, in a quotation, in a proposal, any way you present your price, you should start with something really high. Because then the rest of it looks more affordable. Okay? And let me tell you the story. The most brilliant way of this price anchoring I have seen was a couple of years ago when Apple came out with the Apple Watch. They had the regular watch was $349, but they also had a $17,000 version, which was exactly the same product. It was just in a golden case.
That's right. Yeah.
And all the journalists, all the media were writing about the audacity of Apple to have the same product in two different versions. $349 or $17,000. Now, every time, there's two things to this story. First off, every time somebody read that 17,000 and the 349, that 349 became a little bit more affordable.
Yeah, right.
Okay? So, whatever you do when you present price, start with something that is really high, and then whatever you want to sell has a lower price. And if you don't have different product versions, it could be bundles of products. This is the family pack, or you're a musician. We talked about strings. This is the pack of all the strings for all your group, for all your needs for 20 years. And it's going to be enormously expensive. And nobody's ever going to buy it.
Guitar strings for life.
Yeah, exactly. But it just sits there to make what you want to sell look more affordable. The other thing with the Apple story is that that golden Apple Watch was $17,000. It wasn't $16,999. Remember I said, when you have something that you want to convey value, convey uniqueness, then you do not price on the 9.
You go all the way and then show that. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Man, that's great. That's a great tip. So price anchoring. Well, what's your fourth tip for us, Per?
Well, think about this. And I'm going to convey this in a story. Say you have 3 different products. Mm-hmm. One is at $90, say. One is at $95, and one is at $130. What will happen inevitably among these products is that the cheapest one is going to be the best seller. Okay? And that is because between 90 and 95, the gap between prices are so narrow that buyers would say, the product must be the same. So why should I spend an extra $5 on the same product when I can just buy the cheapest?
Right.
Okay. Now, if you instead move that product from 95 to, let's say, 110 or 115, that price change conveys a value. So now suddenly people, when they make their decisions, they would say 90, 115, 130. And they say, all right, so there must be real difference in quality between the 90 and the 115. So I don't want to buy the 90 because it's probably not any good. So instead I'll buy the 115 one. And by the way, for only another $15, I can get the best.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you need to think about how you price the products within their own little product category, so you don't drive people to buy the cheapest.
Yeah, I can. Boy, I see that definitely.
Yeah.
And what's the fifth tip that you have for us today, Per?
Stuff that people buy infrequently. They have no reference price. And you probably can give an example of something that people within your industry only buys once every year or once every 2 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Those products could be priced at almost any price, because the buyer have no reference. They don't know what it should cost, because last time they bought it, if they ever bought it, they have forgotten what they paid. So those, you can jank up the price. You're still going to see low volume, but it's going to be very profitable for you. You know?
Interesting. And so when you're doing that research, I mean, so much of what you do is psychology. Right.
Yes.
I mean,
absolutely.
It's all just human psychology. And so when you're determining kind of what the market will pay, for something, you have to kind of find out where that price wall is, right? So you have to say, would you pay, $599 for that as opposed to $400, and then the research tells you where you should stop psychologically.
Exactly. The predictive demand analysis, that process that I developed, consists of measuring how potential buyers associate price and value.
Mm-hmm.
And
wow.
And we figure out what price is too expensive, so that will drive lower sales. We figure out what price is too cheap, because that will also drives lower sales. And then we can figure out the price that is just right, that gives the highest sales volume. And price walls was something that interesting that you brought up, because we haven't talked about it. These are psychological price points where a small price change generates a very significant change in sales volume. And wow. Just let me get a short story here. About a year and a half ago, I spent some time with one of the vice presidents of HP, the computer company. And he told me they took this one computer model, and they inched up the price $1 at the time, while very carefully looking at what sales were doing. They could go up $17 without any change in volume. But if they went up $18, sales volume just fell through the floor. So they had found one of these price walls. And what it also meant is that they were leaving $17 on the table for every computer they sold, which kind of start adding up when you're selling 10,000 of these a day.
Yeah, boy, absolutely. That is great stuff, Per. And thanks very much for the tips. That was great. That was great. So what have we learned today? We've learned that pricing is so important, and that so many companies, could be and probably are leaving money on the table. If you're going to be great at marketing, you need to make these decisions with data and not just by your gut. I would advise everybody that's listening to the show to, send an email to Per if you're having any pricing questions, and his company would be happy to put some research-based methodology to work for you guys. My thanks to Per, the Price Whisperer, for being on the show today. Per, what is your contact information just one more time again for the audience?
Yeah, the easiest, you can reach me directly at Per, P-E-R, at Atenga.com. And the website is Atenga.com. Very simple.
Fantastic. Well, everybody have a great weekend, and we're going to see you back here next week for another episode of May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk. Thanks again, Per. Appreciate having you.
thank you very much for having me, and thanks for inviting me to do this talk. It was great.